Hey, welcome back to Stunt Hangar videos. I got about 2 weeks before Brodak, and I got the beam wing project kind of on hold because that's not due to be up until next year. It's kind of windy out today, and I'm done with the spinners. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of show you about what to do with some of the stuff that you have around your shop. I don't have a profile airplane ready to go for Brodaks. And seeing that I mostly switched over to all electric, I figured I would take the Viper 8 wing that I had left from my first electric project hitting the ground, and I would repurpose it into a profile. It has the, I don't know, it's a good straight wing. And it's light. It's only 15 ounces finished. I am going to just kind of knock the color down. There's some spots in it that are going to get touched up, and then we're just going to paint it a basic paint job. And I'm going to try to get it to go ready to go in the next 2 weeks. So I'm just going to basically lay out a set of numbers and rough shape it. I probably can do this in 1 day. People are saying 1 day? There's really nothing to it. So when I come back, I'm going to cut the camera and readjust it. When I come back, we're going to lay out some pieces and cut some wood and glue it together. So I'll see you in a few minutes. Well, I'm back. I dug through the wood pile and I found my straightest piece of 1/2 inch I could find. And the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to draw or cut a top datum line, and that's the line that we can measure from to make sure everything's parallel. I'm going to be using the 3515-18 Cobra motor and the 2700 milliamp underpower battery for this model. I also got out my carbon fiber profile landing gear mold, which I haven't made any, but I'm going to make a special set for this. And I want to, like I said, I'm going to try to get this ready to go in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And I'll post this first video up on the internet this evening so you can get kind of a grasp on how fast things go together. And you know, it all depends on how much you're willing to work on it. Now I gotta find my knife so I can make that cut. Here we go. New blade, very important. The best thing to do is get 100 blades at a time, and if it gets dull or you have an important cut to make, always use a new blade. The next thing is direction of cut. You want to look at the grain of the wood and cut in the direction that will pull it towards the straight edge. You don't want to pull away from the straight edge. So I'm just taking off the minimum amount here, and I'm going to make it in a couple of passes. Because if you cut too deep in one swipe, it won't be straight. Not in 1/2 inch anyway. Because this wing that I'm using came out of Viper 8, which was a built-up airplane, the pushrod exits the wing at the flaps in the center of the fuselage. That's a slight problem. So we're going to put the pushrod inside the profile fuselage. We're also going to try to hide half the electrics and half of the battery. Now this piece of wood wasn't the lightest, it was the straightest. But we're going to hollow out the back half of the fuselage anyway. There are no plans, there are no numbers. This is just something out of my head. I know it'll work. So we've cut off about 1/8 of an inch off the top of that. Next thing I do is I have a long straight edge. You know, the sandpaper on that looks kind of bad, so we're going to change that out too. Yeah, it's expensive to throw away sandpaper. That it would probably work, but it's got some dirt on it, and there's some balled up foreign objects on there, so we're just going to strip it off and get some new on there. This is the T-bar from Great Plains. I think Hobbyco sells one. You can put it on, stick it down to a piece of glass and work the wood back and forth. But I like the sanding bars. Well, this glue is really on there. It must have been on there for a long time. I'm going to show you how I shape with 30 grit sandpaper. 30 grit. Knowing the proper grit sandpaper and how much you can sand when is kind of important. I use 30 grit to move the majority of the material at first. You know, we're not going to sand the whole airplane with 30 grit, obviously. But just like in bodywork, if you have a lot of material to use, what's the sense in trying to sand it down with 220? It's taking a month to get it sanded down. There we go. The better you can get the stuff cleaned off of this, the better off you are. I'll get a razor blade and scrape it off as well. I want to interject on Harbor Freight. I bought some razor blades from Harbor Freight at a reasonable price. I mean, they're reasonable, cheap price. I think they were $4.60 for 100 blades. That's exactly what you got. $4.60 worth of razor blades. My suggestion is to go to a paint store, and yeah, it's double. It's $9 for 100 blades, but the blades are much better. Well, I hear Stunt Hangar. Somebody's sent me a message, so I'm gonna probably have to cut the video here and go answer that message. So I am alerted when somebody messages me, and with 3,500 members, that happens 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'll be back in a minute. Well, I made it back. It was just somebody thanking me for something that I did a while back. So anyway, we get all this scraped off. I'm going to put a new piece of sandpaper on here. Not much to see. I might edit it out. It's rather boring. Of course, it's kind of up to you watchers. You know, Wendy never edited anything. But I'm not going to show you my garden and or anything like that. And I'm not faulting him. He did a great service for everybody. he's off doing motorcycles now. I see that he's doing videos on motorcycles. If you search for him on YouTube, you can find him painting motorcycles. I did motorcycles since 1974. Master Technology Harley Davidson. And to be honest with you, I've had enough of motorcycles. It's really not the machines, it's the people that ride them. Okay, we got that cleaned up. Now let's get some sandpaper on it. Tried to get the lay on there flat as possible without any kinks in it. Alright. When you're sanding long distance, longer sanding bar the better. Okay. This is 80 grit paper that I use on this. And let's true this up. This is our measurement line, or top line. And I'm hoping that I can get this whole fuselage out of one piece of wood. But I'm thinking that I'm going to have to use two. So sight down it, make sure it's straight. Now the next thing to do is sight down the wood and see which end is the hardest or the heaviest, and you want that at the front. You also want to put the wood in such a way that if there is any warp or what have you, it's working in your favor and not against your favor. Okay, so we determined this is the front, this is the front, this is the back. It's kind of bowed up a little bit, and we're going to mark it. We're going to mark it F. Okay, this is the fun part. Letting your mind's eye see the airplane. So what I did was I got one of the spinners that I made, and I want to leave enough on top, on the top line, that I can get a curve and make it look nice. So we're going to come down approximately 3/8 of an inch so I can get it swept back. I'm going to make a mark, and that's going to be my thrust line. And we'll measure from that. It's an 1 3/8. We'll come back here and measure 1 3/8. and draw a line. Okay. Whether this is the correct way of doing things or not, I know that it works for me. It's been my correct way for 50 years. These pens, they never write on wood. Okay, we know that 11.5 seems to be a good nose moment for an electric airplane. This gives you a lot of room to adjust the battery. 11.5. I get my square out. This is where my leading edge is going to be. I need to measure the wing chord of that old Viper wing because I don't really know or remember what exactly it was. So let's go measure that. That's a 10 1/4 wing chord. So now I'm going to measure from that leading edge. Oh yeah, we're going to have another piece of wood. 10 1/4. That thing's going to be long as a freight train. I think maybe because this is a profile, I might be able to suck that nose back a little bit. There won't be quite as much weight on the nose itself because it is a profile. Well, I thought I had a root rib template, but I don't. Let me cut the video again and go downstairs and my storage area and see if I can find a root rib template for that airplane. I'll be back in a minute. Alright, went downstairs and I found the rib pattern for that wing. And also while thinking about this, because I'm extending this thing so far, I didn't want to make the break at the tail end. So we're going to make this fuselage join together in the center above the wing. So it's going to plug on the front and plug on the back. It's got to be very precise so that we have everything in line. So what I've done is I marked out on another piece of wood the thrust line and married it up to the second piece of wood. This is the original. This is the second piece here. And I'm kind of using the grain in my advantage. This piece of wood's a little more warped than the other, and I'm using the hard piece of wood on the front, and it has the twist or the bow going to the outboard side, so we get a little bit of offset in the motor. So we got the twist to the outboard side on the tail, just a few degrees, and the twist to the inboard side on the front a few degrees. So now I got to think about this. Where is going to be the best place to break this plug in? So I'm going to come down off thrust. Not very far, probably 3/4 of an inch. And that's going to be our wing center line. So we're going to come off thrust 3/4 of an inch, and I'll end up measuring that from the top line that we marked. But I want to get it started here. 3/4 remeasure. 2 1/8. It's 2 1/8 from the datum line. So 2 1/8. Measure again. Measure twice, cut once. So this is our wing center line. I switched over to felt tip marker because I just couldn't get the pens to write where the darn. It's the wing center line. And now I'm going to trace the rib out on the wing center line. Remember, this is going to plug in over the top of the wing, so I have to leave enough space in the wood that it can slide over the high point of the wing. So we're going to make a mark here, and we want to cut this back piece here, and we're going to cut it at the top line. It doesn't really matter if it's at a 45 or a 30 or whatever, because we're going to use this piece to mark this piece. So we're going to do that and that. So the first thing we want to do is cut this piece. And because of the camera angle, I'm just going to go ahead and cut the piece off camera on the bandsaw, and then I'll be back and show you how I mark it up. Be back in a minute. Okay, took about 2 minutes to cut that out. And we're just going to clean it up so it's nice and smooth. Then we're going to test fit it. Make a little notch for the horn there. The nice thing about electrics is I don't have to I hate flying unfinished models, but if I run short on time, it'll have a Z-epoxy finish on it because it doesn't have to be fuel proof. Okay. So now let's test fit the wing. A little tight. Oh, that's a good fit, actually. Slightly tight, but we're going to go ahead and open that up a little. I don't want it to be loose. This particular horn right here, we're going to cut this open, and I'm going to cut a slot back to the back so that the push rod is buried. The fuselage on the nose is going to get doubled with 64th ply on each side, and then I'll probably sheet. Heck, I might even sheet the whole thing in 64 ply, but normally I would just sheet this with 16th inch balsa wood to go ahead and hide the push rod. So it might be a slick operation. The only thing I don't like is it's got this bump. Yeah, we'll hide that with the cheek cowl. So that's okay. I had a bell crank doubler up on the top and bottom of the wing. because this is a floating bell crank. So I'm going to sand this off camera real quick. We'll come back. I'll make the front part of the fuselage. We'll get the doublers glued on the front, but not the fuselage glued on the back, because this is going to slide in to this piece here and get epoxied. So the back half of the airplane will be separate from the front half. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, welcome back to today 2 of the project. I got kind of sidetracked yesterday. Real life kicked in, plumbing problems. Anyway, I'm not sure that I'm going to make this for Brodak. We're only about, I'd say 9 days out before I have to get this all ready to go. And I did get the fuselage more or less laid up and the wing fit in. It's in 2 pieces. It'll split right there on the line. I'm trying to figure out how I want to mount the motor. I've got a couple maple motor mounts that are ground into a different configuration. I'm going to have to put camera in hand to give you a little better view of things. I'll probably end up cutting it off here and then gluing it in to the 1/2-inch fuselage on both sides, and then we're going to set the motor in on a nose ring. However, I'm going to set it back some because I'm going to use a flat plate spinner, one of the ones that I make, and we're going to have to fill that with balsa wood. So today is going to be about laying up the parallel lines to get this set up, getting the hole cut in the front. I have to figure out how I want to mount the battery, and I'm pretty sure that the battery is going to be on the tether line, which is the center line of the wing, so the battery will be here, and where to put the ESC and timer. This is a super long fuselage because we got a lot of nose area here, 11.5-inch nose, and I left enough of the back half that I had a good, really good elevator light, super light elevator stabilizer already made up for another airplane I was going to do, but since changed my mind. I'll be showing you how to install my hinges. These are the pocket hinges that you cut in. Super free. As a matter of fact, you can't beat them for freeness. There's nothing like them at all. No, not glued in. Anyway, so because this is a little smaller tail and a little different shape than I normally use, I'm going to make the tail moment a little longer. This is all an experiment. It's just a profile to see, to try things. I'll go ahead and make an 18-inch tail moment instead of the 17-inch tail moments that I normally use. And I'm going to cut the bottom off and glue it on the top so we got some side area. And then I also have to glue some on the bottom of this here because we're going to make a set of landing gear. These are my standard gear, but I already have a mold made up that are going to have to bolt on in that configuration like that, and so I'm going to have some area here. So on the bottom I'm going to have to add an inch or so of material. And what I'll do is I'll get some pieces cut up, drawn out, put the camera in hand, be back in probably an hour, and I'll show you what I got done, and then we'll go from there. So give me about an hour and I'll be back, and hopefully I can make this movie approximately an hour long. I'm not sure whether you guys get bored with me or whatever, but I'm going to try to do this airplane in 9 days and take it to Brodak. So we'll see what we can do. And if not, well, I'll have a practice airplane for the season. So I'll see you in a few minutes. I'll zoom in here. And you can see I've taken a nose ring. Tom Morris sells these nose rings. And I've embedded some motor mounts into the 1/2 inch. And we're going to, come on, get out of there. Make tight fit, that's good. Push this out. I've slotted this in. So this is the start. Remember, I've never made an electric profile, so I really don't know if this is going to be the best way or whatever. I think it'll be a valid way to do things. So I'll put this back in, epoxy all that between 64th on this side and 64th on the other side, and we're going to go all the way back over to the high part of the wing, but not glue it to the back half of the fuselage, because this is going to have to be put on first, then the back half is going to have to slide in, and then we'll attach it in the center on the high point of the wing. So put that in. Then I'll glue the nose ring in. Of course it gets a cheek cowl, so that'll stiffen it up on the outboard side. The nose ring goes back in. Make sure all the fits are nice and tight. Tight is good. And let's see here. The battery's going to go over here. Oh, I wanted to show you. I'm going to cut away the recess for the motor. The motor sits in this thus far. So we will cut this material away right here. So that the motor can spin freely. This material right here will be cut away. Everybody see that? It's rather difficult to do an instructional video and operate the camera at the same time. But one thing to make certain of is I used a square. Now remember, this is the datum line. This is the line that everything's going to be measured off of. The center line of the wing is measured down, and the center line of the trailing edge is measured down. And then I put the plug in so that the wing would sit in there absolutely straight. And then measured down from the datum line on the front and back, and drew the thrust line. So the motor is sitting in the thrust line. Now the other stuff that's, this other wood that's on here is just along for the ride. We can just take a pen and I'll probably, cut away this to make a nice shape or whatever. But I gotta get this motor set first, and then I'm gonna cut this back piece off. I'll come back when I get the back piece cut off. We're going to take this back piece and glue it on the bottom. And I'm going to use 3/8 on the top for a slight turtleneck and canopy. And the rudder is going to be part of the fuselage, so that the rudder will sit right on top of the... I might even cut some of that off. We'll cut this down a bit, because it's getting kind of long. I got to make sure that we can get it in the car. So... let's see what we got here. Yeah, that's better. So that's basically how I'm designing an airplane on the fly. We're just by the seat of your pants. What do you think will work? So I'm going to cut the video. I'll be back in a few minutes when I get some more pieces cut, and I'll show you what I got done. So, see you in a minute. Okay, it's been about 15 minutes, maybe 20. I got something that thought I'd show you. This is what I got so far. I've separated the back half of the fuselage from the front half, and to make it a little easier to work on, and I've cut the motor spacing out. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to drill some holes in this, some little holes, and I'm going to screw that to the maple motor mounts that I inserted into this plywood. We're going to make sure that everything's square. Remember, this is the datum line. You put your square on this, that way you don't have any up thrust or down thrust. And then I'll screw it down, and before I'll glue it, I'll put it flat on the table, and I'll check for in thrust or out thrust this way with the square to make sure that the nose ring is on there correctly. And then I'll go ahead and make up the doublers, unscrew this, take the motor mount off, put the doublers on. Remember, we want to have an overhang on the back half of the nose section here, so that when it plugs in, it's kind of a lock. It'll lock right into this, and we'll epoxy the back half onto the wing, and the front half onto the wing, and it will key together perfectly. So then we'll have the fuselage. And I wouldn't suggest that you build something, a normal profile in this configuration, but seeing as that the wing is already complete, covered and done, I don't have a whole lot of choice. You can't slide it over the top of that bell crank mount, and I can't slide it over the flaps. That wing's already straight, good to go, so we're just going to have to work around that. I went ahead and added a small piece on the bottom of the fuselage in the approximate area where the landing gear is going to go. I just took one of my other gear and laid that up, and this plywood doubler come back to here. So this will be on the 64th ply doubler, and we'll just go ahead and drill holes through it and bolt it in right there. And hopefully, by looking at the leading edge of the wing, I've guessed approximately where the landing gear will go. I also have to figure out where my battery and ESC are going to reside. I know that I want the battery in this area right here. Fortunately, it's a short battery. I'll probably go ahead and put the ESC underneath it, and the timer, and the cheek cowl will hide everything. And I might do like Tom does. He has a cap for the other side as well. I kind of like the looks of that. It kind of hides all the electric business. So this is how far we've gotten. About, I don't know. I've got into it is maybe an hour. I did have this piece already made up, the elevator stabilizers from another airplane. But these are just some things, that I'm showing you, that if you have some stuff laying around the shop, some old parts, don't throw them out. Don't put them to waste. We can build an airplane, and heck, if anybody wants to fly this, they're more than welcome to fly it. I'm kind of a trainer. I'm going to let my friend Scott try his hand at control line. He said, no problem. He can fly RC. He can fly control line. I said, okay. So this is what I'm doing. I'll be back in about, I'd say another, when I get some progress anyway, 15, 20 minutes. I'll give you another clip of where I've proceeded to. And that's basically it. I'll go ahead and cut the doublers. This is the piece right here that I cut off the bottom side of the extra. It was on here like this. I'm going to go ahead and use it as the canopy up here. So that'll give a nice look. Because I like I said, this is just a kind of a play around type profile, but that'll look fine. And we'll see where it goes from there. So I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, camera in hand, this is where we're at now. It's took me a while to figure out exactly how I want to do this. Basically what's happening is I've got the fuselage hollowed between two 1/8" pieces of light ply. I know I said I was going to use 64th ply, but after thinking about it and knowing that I was going to remove so much of this material up here in the nose, I figured I better go ahead and use light ply. Not only that, it gives me a little more substantial mass instead of the 64th. So what we have here is here's the ESC. It's going to sit down under the battery in a pocket. I have a hole opened up here that will allow air to travel through and dump just ahead of the landing gear, which bolt right here. And the battery, of course, will be here. The motor screws in to this plywood plate right here then in turn screws into the motor mounts. And all this will be epoxied together. Now it'll have a 1/2-inch cheek cowl on the outboard side, and on the inboard side I'm thinking that I'll go ahead and put a cover to cover all this electronics. I'm not sure if that's kosher as far as profile goes. I think there's some kind of rule that can only be, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch or whatever, but who cares? If they won't let me fly, well, I'll just practice with it. Anyway, this is where I'm at. I think I'm going to take a break for today. I just had a long day, and so I'll go ahead and edit this up and put it on the internet, and we'll come back tomorrow, and I should have a little bit more done, because I'll probably tinker. I just can't sit and not do anything, but it's very hard for me to shoot a movie and get some progress done, so I'll go ahead and make some progress and then give you some progress updates. So, I'll see you on the next video.